Hey Paul, how's it going? A bit of an impromptu get together on the weekend. I think we're a little bit too
Yeah,
excited about ECS Anywhere. Um, so you've got your Raspberry Pi, right? And you wanted to muck around and try and get ECS Anywhere running on it. I think we're going to be streaming on the main AWS channel for the weekly show. But I think the plan would be maybe whenever we get excited about something in particular, we'll use the secondary channel to kind of showcase it. We'll make sure to push it to YouTube afterwards as well, or maybe get YouTube live working. So we might have like mini, like 10, 15-minute episodes every now and then when we both get excited. Handing over to you though, let's see what you've got and let's get started.
yeah. So if anybody didn't tune into our session this week, we had a container expert from AWS, Jason Umaker, on, and he showed us ECS Anywhere, and that was really interesting. We saw a container, like the control plane of running the container within AWS in the ECS console, but he was running that container and that specific service locally on his laptop at home. And there was a couple of questions in the channel, and I thought about it myself, whether that would work correctly on a Raspberry Pi. And his solution, or Jason's solution, was running Docker in Docker to do that. So it was a really clean install. So we thought it would be interesting to see if we can get that to work, how long it would take us to do that. We thought we'd do it live so you can see us like bumble through it. There's a couple of caveats that I was pointed out to by Jason that might come up. So I've got a couple of bookmarks linked in case we get stuck, some troubleshooting. But I thought what I would do is I'll share my screen and I'll do a little overview of what I'm hoping that we could build today. So I'll share my entire screen. I'm just gonna share this.
That'll be a cool start. I've just popped it up.
Yeah. So I guess kind of like what we want to do today would be if we take this is the AWS cloud and this is like my home. What we really want to do is run at home. I've got a Raspberry Pi, and let's just say that's the Raspberry Pi there.
Mm-hmm.
And in the cloud, we've got ECS. So we've got ECS running up here in the cloud, and normally we would have Fargate or some registered EC2 instances sitting alongside that. So when we go ahead and we run a specific service, that service is running in these containers sitting within the cloud. And I'll put this here. Put this to the back, put this to the back. This is kind of the rough setup that we have like running in the cloud. But what we really want to do is take that container and deploy that as a service, like on my Raspberry Pi at home. So that's kind of what we're looking to hope to get to do. And the ECS Anywhere requires an agent, and it requires the SSM agent. So for simplicity, I'll use this as the ECS agent. So we need that ECS agent, and we need SSM also running on the systems manager. Yeah. So we need those two agents running on that Raspberry Pi to be able to go ahead and deploy like a container and have ECS in AWS as the control plane. Like this is effectively what we want to happen, right? But that's a little bit. Setting up SSM and the agent and setting up everything individually is like a little bit of a pain. So I really like the way Jason did that demo. And what he did was, I'll take that square and I bring that. I'll just take this one to the back. So what Jason set up really was the ability to run. So if we take this large container as my house, so if we go text here and we say like Paul's network, and we take this here as Pi. I don't really want to run those agents specifically on my Pi. I want to keep the Pi clean, although it doesn't really matter in this point of view, but for this experiment. But what Jason has set up is the ability to run that all within like Docker and Docker. So actually on the Raspberry Pi, I'm going to run a base container in Docker. And then inside those containers, I'll run all of these containers alongside that are required to run the ECS agent, systems manager, and the rest of the containers will run alongside that. So on the Raspberry Pi, we won't install the services natively. We're going to install Docker, and Docker will spin up a container, and inside that spun up container, we'll be running those ECS pods. So that's a bit of a rough overview of what we hope to build today. And we'll see whether we can get that going through. So just for clarity, like that's AWS. This is roughly what we hope to build sometimes, through today. So the first thing that we need to do is connect to my Raspberry Pi. So I just completely wiped this Raspberry Pi. So I can see here that it's registered that key.
And by the way, like we did do a bit of an experiment with this towards the start of the week, right? Or just after we actually met with Jason. I think Raspberry Pi 3 and the compute modules that I've got aren't actually going to work, just because you needed like an ARM64 base image for the stuff. That's right, wasn't it? If I remember correctly.
Yeah,
so
that
it has
was
to
right.
be basically Raspberry Pi 4.
Yeah. So when we go, you can install the agents individually. Like those agents will work, so you can make it work on that. But to run, because we're using Docker in Docker, the base image that we're using for Docker is a Amazon Linux 2 instance. And that version of ARM version 6 or whatever it is for the Raspberry Pi 3 and the Raspberry Pi 3 and below is not supported. So we don't have an AMI that supports that.
Yeah.
Just make sure that we can SSH into that Pi. So I can. As you can see, it's the first time I've connected. So I'll reset that password. It's a brand new, fresh version running Raspberry Pi 4.
And Ubuntu instead of like iOS.
Yeah, so I installed Ubuntu 64 on this this Pi, 64 gig card, and if we have a look, it's got 4 gigs of memory. So it's just the 4 gig memory Raspberry Pi. So I've taken the shortcuts to go ahead and install what we need to do for Docker. And we'll paste these as a couple of instructions of what to do to go ahead. But really, this should be what we need to do just to get Docker to run on the Pi. So we'll go through all of this, and we'll be we'll see how this works. And yeah, it looks like it's all working properly. I mean, the first time there, it sort of looked like it was doing an IPv6 lookup. I was hoping it wasn't going to get stuck. My internet's pretty quick, so we shouldn't have too much trouble. And the Pi is not doing anything else, so also, the processing power should be okay for it as well.
Yeah.
Let's see how we go here.
I think everyone's been playing with ECS Anywhere this week. It's been a bit funky, isn't it? Like I know Dev BeardOps did a session on it as well this week as well. So the service has been out for 6 months or so. So I was just surprised that everyone's so enthusiastic about ECS Anywhere at the moment. It seems to be the trending topic. So glad to see some ECS love.
Yeah, it might just been the good time for it. But interestingly, a couple of other people have reached out as well, saying they were interested in it, and they'd thought about it. They weren't quite sure how it worked or how you could go ahead and get it to work, and appreciated like a hands-on demonstration of seeing it up and running. And look, I guess going through the console and deploying it all and clicking through the console, it really shows you what is happening. So I think it's a good way to learn what is like going on behind the scenes. If you build it all out in CDK, that's great. Like you're going to have something that's like really repeatable. But when you're first getting to learn a service, I think it's really valuable to go ahead and look through the console, see what's going on, see how those things correlate to each other. And with something like this service is like it's reasonably simple to get up and running. And literally at the moment in this account that I'm using, I do not have ECS set up at all. So no setup for ECS. So it'll show you that even through the console, that this isn't like a lengthy process or a lengthy task to go ahead and set up.
Yeah. A feature request I'd really like as well. Like I keep thinking about it, this is great for running ECS on a remote device that's doing like an IoT project. But if you're looking at like you've got AWS as your primary cloud, you want to replicate a couple of the apps that you've got on some on-premise hardware that's just sitting around on-premises hardware. I would really like to see as a feature, I guess, similar to what Jason mentioned with EKS is, EKS Anywhere is going to have the control plane deployable, past the cloud across other things. I really want to see that as maybe a feature that ECS Anywhere might get as well eventually. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So this relies on what if we say cloud? This relies on internet being up, right?
Yeah.
And so if you don't have the internet up and running, this is gonna time out. Like it's just not going to work. And actually, it kind of doesn't go exactly like that. It more goes to here, which goes ahead and deploys that container. Data doesn't actually travel from the container back into the cloud. And there was a question that was asked in the Jason session that said, how long or what happens if that connection gets broken in and out? And that was like, it can sustain a disconnect. So that container will still run. The control plane will know that it's disconnected from the specific agent. The agent will know it's disconnected from the control plane. So obviously in a disconnected state, if the task is still running, the task will continue to run. But any messages that you want to go ahead and force a change or force a redeployment or a stop of a specific ECS task, that will be in a disconnected state. And according to the doc stat, it can remain in a disconnected state for up to 6 hours.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good call. And the other thing is if it's running locally, that's great. Doing some processing on site somewhere for something. But it does mean that you're going to have that like constant internet connection if you're using it as additional web hosting, for example, right? Because you're going to have to be connected to the AWS control plane in a sense. So if you're going to use this as extended web hosting, like you'd want to make sure that it's going to be fairly resilient and always connected to the cloud.
That was another question that came up, and maybe while we're still installing it, like let's just consider my home network where I have a router here. So obviously my home internet is connected all the way up, but if I wanted to expose the service that was running on that container, I would have to have my router go ahead and port forward those web ports to expose that to the internet. So if I had a container that was running, let's just say I self-installed a certificate on this container and that was running on 443, then to expose that to the world, I would open port 443 to the IP address of that specific container, actually of the host of the Raspberry Pi, the host port on the Pi that I've proxied all the way from that container, as long as I have an SSL certificate. That would be how you would get that information like to end users.
And that would be like a static IP that you'd have that's set up for your router, or you'd use Dyn DNS that would automatically detect IP changes, and then you can have like a domain attached to it, so it's always accessible for users if your router's up and the computer's on in your network, right?
That's exactly right. So I use no IP. Like basically, I do have on my home set up. So I'll draw that up real quickly. So I have no IP running at home, and my router like continually updates no IP to determine whether or not my IP address has changed. So like I'll have a CNAME that refers to my home address. Then for the rest of my, like if I had a specific services at home, let's just call it like call it demo.site. Because it's not running. There's nothing running right at this very moment because I've got some other issues with my router. But I have Route 53, so demo.site is pointing to a CNAME that comes off no IP. So even if my IP address at home continually changes, I don't need to go ahead and update Route 53. I mean, I could do that manually, but I just have an alias to a CNAME. The CNAME goes to my router. no IP, and the agent running on my router is constantly updating the no IP CNAME with my the IP address as it changes. So that changes every now and then.
Yep.
So that the users, when they go ahead and want to get to my website, this is effectively what happens. It'll look up demo site. Demo site is an alias of CNAME of no IP. No IP has the updated IP address, so the user then gets returned the IP address directly to my router. My router will port forward port 443 or port 80 or whatever port I specify to set up that container or that service. That's how I would go ahead and do that. So that's just one. It's a good call out, Matt, because ECS Anywhere will not proxy the traffic back into AWS Cloud, so you can't go ahead and just deploy a load balancer and expect traffic to go here and then automatically across there. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I wonder if you use that kind of design as well, I wonder if that means that you could use like Route 53, like latency-based routing. I think it would be my guess. You could use that to basically have an ALB for your AWS ECS cluster, right? And Route 53 will have half the traffic go to that. The other half of the traffic might go to what you've got at home. So if you're hosting a website, and then if there's a disconnect or anything like that, then it weights the traffic back onto your AWS environment, or if AWS for whatever reason something's not right there, it can then weight it back to your site at home as well, right? So I think you could do some fancy stuff in Route 53 actually, to kind of have this always available one way or the other.
Yeah, you could do something like that and have it like flip between the two, and then maybe for that specific task set that to be running in Fargate and making sure that only one was running all the time. I don't know. Let's just say for whatever reason you were hosting your hobbyist site at home on a Raspberry Pi, and that link went onto Reddit or something like that. Then you'd have a file back to be able to go back and spin up that little site in the cloud if you wanted to. That you could certainly do something like that. It's taken longer than expected to update this. I guess I didn't think that there would be so many updates from a fresh install just last night. I'm sure it won't be too long now, though. I think it's 150 meg, and it's probably not the speed of downloading the internet, but it's more the speed of just unpacking all these little updates.
We'll see how that goes. We've got Zane. He's actually just jumped on the stream and joined us. We had a late night last night, didn't we, Zane? I'll give him a bit of a call out. So Zane is one of the AWS Melbourne user groups members he's basically, I can articulate this a lot better, but he's basically been working on this, building out this API using AWS serverless, the SAM framework or library. So he's been doing that every single night, I think starting at 9:30 p.m. So it's always a good watch. He made some good progress last night. He spent a couple of extra hours, and he's looking to build out his channel as well. So if anyone wants to watch something 9:30 p.m. AES tea time, Zane's usually online.
Zane, what was your channel called? Raw Coders? I think you had it.
Raw Coders, yeah. If you give us a link, I'll put it up quickly. Yeah, there are quite a few updates, isn't there? Yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a few. The issue that I had with because I was going to also try this on my Raspberry Pi 3, but the issue I spoke about earlier with my router was a really interesting one, that for whatever reason, my router has suddenly stopped broadcasting a 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi signal. And so the Raspberry Pi 3 doesn't support 5G. So I can't even try it. I can't even connect to it. I'd have to connect it to Ethernet to go ahead and set that up. And I don't have any free Ethernet ports at the moment. So yeah, it's really interesting. I'm not sure whether it's a firmware issue or what it is. So one of the things that I did think about, if we go, so on an earlier episode, Matt and I built some specific containers. So our rotating devs, just a demonstration container. We went ahead and we published that on Amazon's ECR public gallery. So ECR is our Elastic Container Repository. And this is a reasonably new feature that we had ECR for a long time, which meant for private projects, we could go ahead and we could host our containers, but there wasn't a way to publicly share those containers. And this has really exploded with the amount of containers that come in. So at the moment, it looks like there's 41,000 containers. I like this because if you're operating within your account environment, like from within AWS, then you're not going to be rate limited. It's going to work with your account to understand how many pulls you're doing on those specific containers, which means if you, people have experienced this, I've seen this before, where if you had build pipelines that were pulling from a Docker Hub, if you weren't authenticated, you would be rate limited. And so that's like really annoying. It would break your pipelines, it would break your deployments. So we've gone ahead and we've published a specific container for devs in the shed, and this is the one.
Yeah, that one. Yep.
This is the one here. So now, when we built this container, we built this on x86. So this was for x86, and so when when I went ahead and tried this once, it won't work. So I went ahead and rebuilt that container and tagged a version for ARM.
I was about to ask that because I was looking at ARM and ARM64. I'm like, when did we do that? I don't remember doing that.
Yeah, so a couple of days ago, I went and rebuilt that container, and it was
nice.
Basically an insignificant change to go ahead and rebuild that container and publish that up, but just so that will work on ARM. If we spent a bit more time, and I looked at like the base image, I think it was an Alpine Nginx image. We could have found a multi-arc version that would just work on both, but I didn't spend any time. I just pushed it out to ARM. I forgot what I used as a base container, maybe Nginx or something.
Yeah, I think most of the stuff that we're going to do in containers, we're probably going to put on the ECR public gallery, right? Is my thinking.
Yeah, we'll put it up there so that people can give that a go. And if what was the URL, Matt? Was it rotatey? Do you remember? If you paste it over, if you find it, we'll be able to show that what the service that we're hoping to get live today as well.
Let me have a hunt. I might have to do some AWS account crawling.
Yeah.
I remember rps.devsintheshed.com was for our rock paper scissors the game, so that should be
That's
up.
Right.
But let me find the other URL.
It might be. We might have put it in our GitHub.
Maybe if we bothered to create a README.
Yeah.
I'll find it in the background. How's that install going, by the way?
Going slowly, man. Slower than I expected. Anyway, while that install is happening, what we can do is we can configure up our ECS cluster. So we're going to create a cluster, and for the cluster template, we're not going to use like EC2. We're going to just do a networking only cluster. So go ahead and click next step. We'll call this Twitch demo. I won't create a new VPC for this. We're not too worried about that. I won't worry about container insights either. So we'll go ahead and we'll create that cluster. And creating an ECS cluster, it happens like really quick, like pretty much instantly. So you can see here, like here we go, like the cluster is like ready already. And yeah, while it's still going, maybe what we can do is we'll go ahead and we'll configure that ECS task. So we'll save some time there. So, sorry, a task definition. So we're going to create a task definition. And the task definition that we're going to use, we're going to select external. So this is for use with ECS Anywhere. And we'll call it rotate. So we'll call it rotatey devs. Now, this specific task is pretty basic. It's just Nginx serving up some static content. So we don't need a specific role, but you can go ahead and configure roles, and an IAM role. And that would be if, let's say, for example, that was interacting with DynamoDB, we might configure a specific role that that we're going to apply to that service that enables the service to communicate with DynamoDB. For this, I'm just going to go ahead and select none. For the network, I'm going to leave that as default. Task execution role. So the role that is going ahead and moving the containers around, we can change that as well, but we're going to just leave that to be none. But here we go for the task size. And so as Jason mentioned, we need to be like fairly explicit around setting the task sizes of the memory and the CPU for those instances.
Did he say something like it defaulted to 8 gigs, which would exhaust your Raspberry Pi? So I think that was
something like that.
ECS Anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll suck up all the resources available on the Pi. For this, it's tiny, so we'll just use 128 for that. And for the container, we're going to go ahead and use rotate dev container, and that will be this. So we'll have a hard memory limit. We'll set that to 128. That's required. You can see the star there. There is no private authentication, so we can leave that. If we select that, then you need to go ahead and set up all the secrets and connections between it. But that's a public repository. So
ECS image, ECR image,
Yep, that's right. So for the port mappings, we have to be explicit the way we map our ports here, because we don't have the ability to like allow it to create whatever specific ports they're going to be. We need to pick one, and this will map to a range that we'll specify on the host when we run the ECS Anywhere Docker and Docker container. So I'll pick 8080 as that port, and the internal port, I can remember this was running on port 80. So I remember internally that served up on port 80 on that specific container. Everything else here, we're not going to worry about. So we won't worry about the health checks or the environments or anything like that. But you can go ahead and you can set this up. This specifically, if you've got some constraints that might be like on your local environment. So like, CPU units, or you want to override the entry point when you're running it on premise for this specific container or something like that. And also passing environment variables as well. So for this, we're not going to go ahead and change any of these specific settings. We'll leave it all as default, and we'll click add. So you can see now we've got the container definition. We're not going to change anything else, including like an app mesh or proxy. And we can also configure like specific volumes as well. Now this won't work the same way we expect it to, because these volumes, we don't have access to mount like EBS volumes. I guess maybe if we had like a site-to-site VPN, you might be able to go ahead and configure up some EFS volumes or something. I'm not really sure. We'd have to look at that another day. But for now, we're not going to worry about anything like that. So the application that we're running in ECS is just static content. So I'll go ahead and I'll click create on that. And I have that task up, the task definition up. So this has certainly taken like much longer than I'd hoped it to take. I thought that would be done in 1 or 2 minutes, but it can't be too far now.
Yeah, boss. It must have been early there. By the way, what's the plan for this week? I know we had 2 topics that we're thinking for this Wednesday. Are we thinking SQS?
Well, because SQS had its 15-year birthday last week, and I'd worked with a couple of customers around integrating like more traditional or legacy applications across SNS and SQS. And I had a couple of people ask, and you do hear it now and then, where people ask or talk about the limitations on message size using SNS and SQS, because those message sizes are limited to 256K. What would it mean if I wanted to use those cloud native services, but I wanted to use a larger message size? And so AWS does provide some increased, so there's the extended libraries that are provided for both SQS and SNS that enable you to send messages up to 2 gig.
2 gig, yeah.
And they're available for both Java and for, it's only available for Java. So what this really does is make it reasonably transparent when you're wanting to send really large messages around, and what's going on ahead behind the scenes, it's moving it in and out of S3 for you. You don't have to worry about it. It's abstracted away. So I thought that might be, interesting for us to do a little bit of Java dev work, see whether we can, get stuck halfway through and talk through some of those scenarios and just show that there's, quite a bit of versatility on top of just the straight out usage of SNS and SQS. What was the other topic that we were thinking about, Matt?
Well, the other one was, I think there was a workflow studio for step functions that came out. So it was kind of like a cool studio that we could play with some of our Lambda-based stuff that we've got sitting around. And it's nice and visual, right? So you can kind of build out your own flows. I haven't really logged in or looked at it just yet at all, but I'm really keen to play with that. So I mean, maybe for SQS's birthday, maybe it makes sense to look at the project that you worked on. And then I think we have a session on something new for Redshift the following week. And then maybe 3 weeks' time, maybe we'll get around to looking at Step Functions Workflow Studio.
Yeah, I've never even seen it. Have you?
I have not. I legitimately have not even logged in to look at it yet. But I'm excited to play with it. I want it to be a bit of a surprise to the show, and also make the point that I'm very good at fumbling around. Maybe sometimes. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, this is about as much as I've seen of it.
Yeah.
I know Marcia on Fubar did a good video around it. Excuse me. But like, other than this, I don't know what it is. But I mean, this looks pretty good, right? Like, how many times do we work through like building up our specific tasks in JSON, and it's like, it's easy to make a mistake, but plotting it out visually is like really handy, and the ability to then pull it back into JSON to be able to integrate it into our like version control systems and pipelines looks good. I mean, this looks pretty good. I mean, it looks really good from this animated GIF here.
Python free twisted, so it's getting there. It's moved along a little bit.
Yeah, I wonder whether this has gone extra slow because the SD card that I found is one of the not very good quality ones I have. I feel that most of the time, anything that I do that's slow on my Raspberry Pi is because of disk I/O.
I've got a new toy. So I got this Argon case. Have a Google search for it actually. So go Argon case Raspberry Pi. But effectively, at the back of the case, it allows you to put in like an M.2. So I haven't done it yet. I only just arrived. Yeah, that's the one. Argon 1. So let's have a quick nose at that. So this case underneath, you put your Pi on top. The board lifts so you can get the GPI port access at the very top. But right underneath that case, you can actually put an M.2 SATA, and it's got its own special boards to join that M.2 SATA drive to the Raspberry Pi. So in effect, that might make my Pi quite a bit faster, considering I'm usually disk bound. Yeah, it gives you. Yeah, that's right. That's how you do it. So you do it over USB.
So it does this over USB?
Yeah, that's correct. But it's going to be a lot more reliable as well than a flash card. So this is one of the new toys that I've ordered. I think it was like $100 the case. So it's more expensive than a Pi, but it just felt like a really cool project to look at, and it just looks cool. There goes your poster in the background. Yep.
Was this? Yeah, 40 something bucks.
$40. Yeah, it must have been a lot cheaper than I thought. But yeah, so that's going to go on my Pi 4 8 gig, I reckon. And that's just going to soup it up a little bit. I'm going to have like I think I've just got like a 64 gig or 128 gig. It was a super cheap M.2, but a high quality. I think it was a Western Digital drive or a Crucial drive. I'd have to look at it.
This is just the case. This is not the case that you said.
Argon 1 with M.2 support. I can see Zane's just mentioned, when's the merch coming for devs in the sheds? It's actually making its way through. We've got we want to do a really nice shed design, and we want nice nice characters that we've designed as well, that we want the printout on shirts and a whole bunch of other things. So so it's coming. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks we can get t-shirts ordered and get them ready to send out to a couple of our followers in the next month, maybe, as well as some of our guests. It's that second one, Paul, SATA SSD support. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think this is really good. I think I should get this. I'd say that would have sped this up a lot more. I've got a funny feeling that's why this is so slow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this would make a world of difference, right? 100% the Pi is always just so slow because of that. The memory card drives, they're just not that fast and they're not that reliable. Yeah. I have so many of those SD cards die on me.
Yeah, and I think that one that I put in there was in the back of my drawer, 64 gig, because it was really slow. What we can probably do while that's happening is see if I can get it running on my laptop locally. So let's see if we can do that. See how quick we can get it going. So what are the commands here? Docker build. So we'll build that container. I've done this once on the computer, so I think that container is built already. I don't even have Docker running at the moment.
There we go. I can see the whales popped up the top.
Yeah, he'll start up in a second.
I actually think it's
it's working.
there.
It's just,
like, yeah, I think it's like about 5-10 seconds away from being ready.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how quickly we can actually do this and build it from scratch. And see, it's not my internet that's slow. Like it's pretty fast.
Yeah.
But what we will have to do is make a different task definition, because that's not for
Your pigeons are very active today. I think it's because it's the first day in a week that hasn't been raining in Melbourne. We've just for everyone watching, it's been pouring down every single day, and then today is the first sunny day, so it's really nice outside. I had like an hour's walk this morning. It was beautiful. But all the birds are out, like they're all on the lawns. Everything's still a little bit wet.
Do 8081 just for something different here.
Yep.
So this is the exact same thing we made before, except I used a different image name. So I used latest, which I know is x86.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and create that. So now I know that task definition is there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that container has gone ahead and has been built. So we're up to this. So the next bit is we run on the local machine. This is what we're going to try and do on the Raspberry Pi soon, but we're going to go ahead and run that container.
Yep.
Now, as Jason mentioned, this has been we need to run that container in privileged mode. We're going to call it ECS Anywhere, and we're going to map ports 8080 to 8090, both internally and externally, just to and from that host container there.
Yeah.
And it's going to use that latest container that we just built. The next step is we exec into that container. So now we're inside that container running on my local laptop. And here's where I feel like a lot of the magic happens. It's pretty cool, really. So we go to instances, ECS instances, and we register an external instance. We're not going to change any of the roles. We'll just leave that how it is. Go next step. And it provides us with this shell script here. And I'll paste it in and let it do its thing. But that shell script, what it does is downloads this, the copy's sort of in the way there, the button, but it downloads this shell script from Amazon's website, runs that shell script, and will join into like my cluster with this specific activation ID and activation code. Now, if somebody was quick enough, or if you were quick enough, Matt, you'd be able to like retype this string out and you'd be able to register an instance in. But effectively, we're passing in an activation ID and activation code, and those two pieces together say, I give permission for this instance to register itself into ECS as an external instance. So that went ahead and did that. So it happened really quick, right? So basically, that shell script installed their ECS agent, SSM, a couple of other bits and pieces like systemd that is required to run this. Actually, no, that's the base image that's running systemd. So this container now, which is running on my laptop, is ready to be able to connect into ECS Anywhere, so we could deploy containers. So this container itself, I believe, is also running Docker. So I'm in the container and I'm running Docker inside the container. So my Docker container is running a secondary container, which is running the ECS agent. So the ECS agent is running in a container inside a container. And when we go ahead and deploy that task, we're going to see those other containers running next to that. Now, if we reload here, we'll see that here we go. We've got a container instance, so that's been registered. And as Jason said as well, that would be registered in SSM as well. So if we run a new task, we're going to run an external task. We're going to pick x86 dev shed. We'll just run it once on that specific cluster. We're not going to group it. We're not going to change anything else here. We're just going to go ahead and run that task. Now, what we should see happen is that we'll communicate with that container that's running the ECS Anywhere agent. And we should see in pretty soon. Here we go. So we can see now that that container has come up. I'll sort of make that a bit bigger so we can see it. So here we go. Devs in the shed is running. And so now if I go to my local host, and I do there we go. So that's it's running on my machine, and this is exactly what we expected to happen. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I like it. I think it's really easy. If I went ahead and did stop on that task, and we went back to the terminal, we could see that container has stopped. If I reload this doesn't work anymore. So fairly simple to get up and going. But our Raspberry Pi is still updating, so it's probably been updating now for like 20 minutes. So it's got to be close, Matt. It's got to be close.
It's got to be close. One of the things I did want to call out though is we've actually had Jason run this on his Windows laptop, and I was sitting here in the background thinking it's quite ironic actually. Like we're going to have every major platform. In a sense, we're going to have your x86 Intel Mac. We've got Jason's Windows laptop that he was running Docker on. And then, the Polish this off will have an ARM64 Raspberry Pi as well. So I put the URL up for everyone that wants to watch the episode with Jason. So you can type that into your browsers, watch the previous episode if you want to see Jason do his magic. But I'm thinking at the end of the session, we've pretty much touched every major platform in some way, which is awesome.
Yeah, it would be. It's pretty cool. I wonder whether that specific tagged instance would run on the M1 Mac though. I don't think it would.
I'm on an M1 Mac. We could try.
Do you have Docker installed?
Let me see. Maybe not. It's quite fresh. Oh no, I do have Docker. Yeah, I've got the 8 gig version of the M1 Mac, so it might struggle a little bit, but I'll get it up to date in the background. Maybe we can give it a try at the very end.
Get that up to date, and then what I'll do is I'll copy and paste that string to you, that register string, and you see if you can register your M1 Mac into that cluster, and we'll see what happens there.
Sounds good.
But yeah, I think I'm going to. I actually did buy a new SD card because I knew this one was a problem, and that's why it was sitting in the back of the drawer. But I don't think it came. It never came, and I was only triggered by it when I was like looking through the back of my drawer for a spare SD card, and I was like, oh, I wonder why I have this 64 gig card at the back of the drawer. And I thought to myself, I thought I bought one recently. Like, I wonder where I put it. And I know I didn't use one recently, so yeah, I'm sure that this is just it's so slow, not because of the Pi, but just because of that SD card is so slow, which shouldn't really matter much once it's up and running. But for doing anything like this, it's like incredibly slow for any type of update.
Yeah, maybe we do a mini quick episode of getting the Argon M.2 case running. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Yeah, because that will future-proof us for projects like this as well.
Yeah,
because it's nice and clean, like ECS Anywhere, right? It's just everything's running in a Docker container, so we can wipe it from the Pi afterwards, then use the Pi for another project again.
Yeah, that's what I liked about it, that the Pi now has like absolutely nothing on it. I sort of haven't had to poke around too much, but what on the Pi doesn't matter so much because I guess SD cards, even a 64 gig or 32 gig card, is probably like $10 or something. But you know, I don't like installing all these agents on my local machine, so I really like that I don't have to have my local machine running, you know, specific agents that I don't need to be running on it and messing it all up. This is all like really clean. So you know, if I was to, you know, I can see that ECS Anywhere is running, but at the moment I kill that container, that's it. Like it's completely gone. Like those agents are not running on my machine anymore. Like I don't have to worry about that happening. So I think it's a really clean way to play with it.
Okay, Docker's actually starting up now. It's just done its update.
So to remove it, this is all we need to do, and that'll also remove from Systems Manager. So it's not just hanging there if we had it there.
Yeah.
It's completely gone. Do you have the JSON Umica link handy? No?
I am just loading it up. I should really put that in the chat as well for everyone. Give me 2 seconds. So I'll just put that up on the stream. This is the link. There we go. You beat me to it, Paul. There, perfect.
Yeah, it's a little bit faster. I'm just we hope to make this a smaller stream, but we might spend most of the time like talking around it and watching this install. I mean, I'm sure we've all done this 100 times. I certainly
it's always like, it's just a 10-minute job. I'll just do that. And the wife she always turns around to me and she's like, it's never a 10-minute job. Something will happen. It always takes hours. And I mean, welcome to welcome to working in
Look
IT
at that.
and tech, right? Yeah.
It just finished.
It's just finished. Nice. Okay. Yep.
It literally just finished. All right, let's go ahead and install Docker. So this first command is just to get that Docker shell script. So I think you need to run that next. I don't know if this needs sudo. We'll see how it goes. Oh no, it's got all the commands inside. So this should now go ahead and install Docker and the pieces that we need for Docker. Hopefully this won't take too long. I think Docker's only like 15 megas or something like that, so should be okay.
Yep.
We'll put all of these commands in a little README file in the repo, and we'll tag them with the video if anybody wants to go ahead and do this at home as well.
Yeah, that'd be quite handy for everyone, I think. I'm just downloading the GitHub project in the background, but need to do 2FA again.
So these were just the commands that we were going to, you would execute to do that. One of the next commands that we need to run is add Ubuntu into the Docker group. Because if you install Docker on Ubuntu, or I think it's like pretty much any variant of Linux, you won't be able to run Docker unless you're root, which makes it really difficult. So we'll add that into that Docker group that enables you to run that. Because this is a stock standard install, I haven't set up a proper username or I haven't added a user. I'm just using Ubuntu as that user.
Yep.
Yeah, I suspect that the Pi 4 with an SSD would be 1,000 times faster than this. I have used this specific Pi with this specific memory card to run a Kubernetes cluster. It was one of the nodes in that cluster, and it was okay, but it just took a long time to go ahead and install and start up. I remember that.
Yep. I'm actually thinking I probably have the case in the background that I just haven't used. Let me see if I can show it off to anyone. Yeah, I do actually. I've got it here. I have all my Pi stuff stored. So I've got
take
the Argon 1 M.2. I think you can see through the. Yep. Yeah, so it's just saying this is it here, the Argon 1 M.2. So that's the case. So I can get that set up with a Pi. And then I just got like a really cheap but good quality Western Digital. It's actually 250 gigs reading it. So that's going to be the M.2 drive that I'm going to whack in there. I don't think there was a limit to the length of the drive that the Argon 1 supported. So I think a full size drive was okay, but I think I got like an 80 in diameter to put into the Argon 1. So
what's the price on a drive like that these days? I haven't looked for a long time.
It was really cheap. It was surprisingly cheap. It was something like 30 or 40 bucks, I think. I did get it during the Prime sale, but SSDs have massively come down since like 2 or 3 years ago. It's been really good.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, well, I mean, I was paying like 12, 15, something like that, $10 to $15 for a 32 or 64 gig SD card, and then junk basically.
Yeah, because the other thing is like I love like the Pi that I've got for the Pi 400 with the keyboard and the mouse, because I just basically plug it into any screen that I want. But I'm tempted more to use just the Pi 4, just because the SSD is going to make such a difference, and then just have a KVM switch to change the keyboard, mouse, and monitor from whatever I've got plugged in, like my Mac, over to the Raspberry Pi if I want to work from that sometimes.
Yeah.
One of the cool things though is like like you can work through the terminal to the Pi like you're doing, but it's a little known fact. I think you were surprised on it as well. Is you can connect to the Pi over SSH on Wi-Fi. You can connect to the Pi over Ethernet, but you can actually connect to the Raspberry Pi over USB. So if you connect the Raspberry Pi into your USB port in your computer, it emulates like being connected as like a network device. So you can actually SSH over USB to your Raspberry Pi if you just want to work between your laptop, and which can be quite handy sometimes if you've got poor Wi-Fi, like we do sometimes in the sheds. So we've got Ethernet to our computers, right? But sometimes the house Wi-Fi doesn't quite get across here, and we'd have to set up like a repeater if we wanted to do it properly. But you can just also just plug in via USB the Pi and then work that way too, which is probably a bit more reliable and faster.
Yep. So Docker has installed, and while Matt was talking, I went ahead and added Docker Ubuntu to that Docker user group.
Yep.
For anybody that is following along, like it won't work straight away. You need to like log out and log back in again, or open a new terminal. That's where I went ahead and logged out, logged back in again, and then I just wanted to run Docker run hello world. So we'll just make sure that it is all working there.
Yeah.
And that should come up in just a sec. We should see that in just a sec, and we should see that run basically just output hello world. That's all that container really does.
Yeah.
But the next step will be to clone Jason's repo. So I'll copy that. Yeah, I think at this point my Pi 0 performs better than this Pi 4.
Yep.
And system load is high, but that's probably all because it was, here we go. So that container worked, hello from Docker. We know Docker's working properly. Just want that to finish and exit that run. There we go. All right, so now we'll clone this repo. Clone pretty quick. Go ahead and build that container the way I built it on my machine earlier. So that will go ahead and pull down Amazon Linux 2. I'm not sure how big that container is. I'm guessing this is taking that from Docker Hub. The size of that, I think it's like a couple hundred meg. So this is what we're pulling down. So Amazon Linux 2 from this. If we look at the tags, this will automatically pull down the specific one that we need. So Amazon Linux is fairly small container.
Yeah, it's very small.
50, 60 meg. Yep. So yeah, it's already pulled that container down. Inside that container, it'll update. As I said earlier, it'll also install systemd. And doesn't need to do a whole lot more in that container to go ahead and build that container that we're going to go ahead and run Docker in as well. While we're here, I might open that Docker file and we can have a look at it and see what's happening there. So effectively, it's used Amazon Linux 2, update and install systemd. What's it doing here? just remove all the temp startup services, I guess, like systemd, temp files, service. Well, I'm not exactly sure what he's doing there, but that's kind of what it looks like. Remove a couple of internal symlinks. Actually, these are files. Install EPL and Docker from Amazon Linux Extras. So for anybody that hasn't used the Linux AMIs, Amazon Linux Extras has a lot. It's like an extra repository for a lot of the commonly used tools for Amazon Linux too. So here's what you can run there. So PHP. I'm not sure what the desktop's for. I guess that's for the Amazon workspaces. You'd use that there. Tomcat, Firecracker, Credo. So a trusted and easy way to go ahead and install some of those services that you might need. Okay, that's progressing along. What was the next step? So then he pulls down Docker Compose. Okay, so he's just downloading Docker Compose, the binary of Docker Compose, and just dropping in the right location and setting that to be an executable, because you can run Docker Compose within that container then. So a couple of those updates shouldn't be too big, and systemd a couple of megs. So if this won't take like the way it took before.
Yep. And we've just had Karthik join us as well, I can see. Hey, Karthik.
Oh, yeah. G'day, Karthik. So, Karthik, are you and Zane going to stream tonight? What are you going to stream about?
He's a little quiet. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. I might show this specific little camera that I got. So the first episode we did, I used my phone as a secondary camera, and the camera on the iPhone 11 is really good, or 12, sorry, is really good camera, but it was difficult to move around, and once through the stream I knocked it and it all fell over. So I got this this iSwan camera. Somebody recommended this one to me. And I think it's really good. The camera quality is really nice. The base is quite heavy, so it's not going to wobble and move around. You can adjust the screw, so the tightness, to determine whether or not this should move up or down, so that if you put it somewhere, it's going to stay at that specific point. It's got proper zoom function, so you can zoom in and out. But it also has like a little light. So I plug it in.
Is it like a hardware zoom, or is it software driven zoom?
It doesn't have a lens, it's just a software zoom.
Okay. And whilst I'm waiting for Paul, I think he's paused for a second, plugging in the new USB device. We'll give him a second. But yeah, there's a couple of apps that you can use for your iPhone to stream as well. And so you can use your iPhone as a camera. I'm just having a look. I did remember the names a couple of weeks ago. Epoch Camera was one of them. So Epoch Camera, if I remember correctly, was by Elgato, which have some really great streaming gear. But there was one other one that everyone else was using as well on top of Epoch Cam. That was another option. Epoch Cam is free by memory too. So So maybe that's the one to have a look at. I think it was Reincubate, looking at my Google search. I think that was the other one that people were using to show their iPad or iPhone. So that's always a good one to use. Now I can see that Paul's drops completely, so I'll just give him a few more minutes. Hopefully he can join back in. But I'd say plugging in the USB device probably confused his browser. So I'll give him a second. How's everyone's afternoons going so far anyway? Much planned for the rest of the weekends? And I'll just check up on him. I'm just going to message him, make sure he's all good. Lunchtime, yeah, it's about lunchtime. I am going to skip lunch, but my wife actually wants to test the Elgato streaming device with her Switch. So my plan actually is to set that up for her next, and then I'm going to set up a Twitch for her, and she's going to stream the new Zelda game. So that's going to be fun. How are you going, Paul?
I don't know what happened. I think maybe when I lifted up, plugged in that cable, I accidentally pulled out the network cable.
It's okay. Yeah, I felt like something like that had happened. So I was just talking to Kartik about lunch, but let's get back into it. Did much progress happen whilst you were cut off?
No, not as much as we'd hoped. We're about 50% through building that container on the Pi.
Yep. Nice. It's okay. Yeah, I was just saying, my wife's gonna set up a Twitch account. She's gonna stream Zelda today, so it's gonna be a bit of fun. And we've got like this game capture cam link device. Maybe I'll quickly share it. Let me get a share up.
Matt, is that on PC Zelda, or like, I mean, like, how do you like? I don't know how you're supposed to share games on consoles. Share it's Twitch from stream onto Twitch from consoles.
Yeah, it's all actually through. I'll just very quickly get the share happening. Has that come up for you, Paul?
Let me see. No.
Not yet. Can't see JB Hi-Fi.
Yes, yeah, it is now. Yep, I can see it.
Okay, cool. So basically, the game comes through. It's released on the Nintendo Switch, so it's a Nintendo game. It's a Zelda game. So it's one of their franchises. And the way to get it through to Twitch is you effectively have this little device, and you plug your HDMI in. And so your Switch will get plugged into that, or your Xbox or a PlayStation or whatever. That USB-C connection goes to your computer and basically mirrors the video. And then on the other side of it, you've got the out, and that just goes into your TV. So you'll have the picture on the TV, you can play the game on the TV, but it's capturing sound and capturing video and basically pushing that through to your TV, through to your computer. And then you can use any of the streaming softwares to get it live on Twitch. So that's how you kind of do it for console. It's going to be a little bit fun. So I'm going to enjoy doing that this afternoon.
So did you buy that device already?
Oh, I had it lying around from 2 years ago, actually, because when I first played around with streaming. So the HD60S Plus is the new one. I think that's the one that JB was selling, but I got it 2 years ago when tech was a lot cheaper. And I've got the older one that only does 1080p, so which is perfect for the Switch. But it means that if I was to play a new game on, the new Xbox or the new PlayStation, it might struggle a little bit.
Right.
So I've just put your screen back up.
Okay. So we're at 25 out of 28 of the updates that are needed to be run.
Yep.
Luckily, we've got some loyal viewers because this has been painfully slow.
It has been, yeah, it'll take 10 minutes, and it always takes a bit longer than what you plan. So Kartik, basically we did the Wednesday stream, and I'll put the link back in actually. So Jason had this really cool idea of like coming on our show and showing off ECS Anywhere running on his Windows laptop inside of Docker. And so effectively what we've done, and here's the link to the show again, I'll just put that up. So if you want to go back, so he did that on Windows, and we were like at the very end of the show, could we get this working on Raspberry Pi? And so we're attempting to get ECS Anywhere running on a Raspberry Pi, and then have this container that we're deploying with AWS, running locally on the Pi. We've managed to get it working on Paul's laptop, but the SD card for the Pi is very, very slow. So it's been a lot longer than what we planned. But I think we're just about there, actually. I think maybe 5 or 10 minutes left. Because once everything's been downloaded, it's going to spin up a lot faster. Actually, looking at it, this is our longest stream yet, 1 hour, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, just for people coming in as well, this isn't on the AWS official Twitch account. Whenever we want to do something outside of the normal Wednesday sessions, we're going to put up on this particular channel. And so if you subscribe to this channel, you'll get intermittent live sessions called out, and that's whenever we've decided to stream something. So I might get bored one day and want to stream a Flask application I'm building for, ordering merch. It's one of the things I've got to do soon. So I might stream that for a couple of hours. If we've got a 5 or 10 minute video where we want to show something cool that we've discovered in AWS that was quite exciting to us, we might go live for 5 or 10 minutes as well. So this channel is really just for anything ad hoc. The AWS channel is so busy, right? Like there's shows all the time, constantly. It's hard to get into that schedule. So we're going to stick to that Wednesday, Wednesday lunchtime slot in Melbourne time zone for the official show with the official content. And then literally everything else, whenever we have an idea or whenever we want to stream, we'll come onto this one. And the YouTube channel as well, once we're authorized, we're waiting for YouTube to grant us access to stream. Once that's granted as well, then the YouTube channel will also be doing live streams as well. So I might just put the link in for the stream too. So this is the official Devs in the Shed YouTube channel. You can just go onto YouTube and search for Devs in the Shed. It will come up as well. But that's where we'll be streaming from as well. And that's where we're also uploading every single video. Once we're finished on Twitch, we put all the videos there as kind of an archive as well for people to refer to later. Because we know that a lot of people will just search YouTube, ECS Anywhere, how do I do it? And then they'll hopefully find our videos, and hopefully being hands-on with the videos as we plan in our show is going to help them, get their apps up and running fairly quickly.
I think we've still got a while to go because it hasn't even installed Docker yet. I just went back and looked at the steps.
You know what? Maybe I need to order you one of these as a present. Next day Prime shipping, you'll have it tomorrow.
I knew that 64 gig SD card wasn't sitting there for no reason. This would have been faster off any sort of USB that I could plug into it. Yeah, that's true. I'm pretty sure this was faulty too. I hope that it's like stays running long enough. I've got a funny memory that at some point in time it just like throws some sort of like error and then just stops all execution. But we'll see. We'll try. Can't be too much further away. If we haven't finished by 1:30, we'll give it up for the day.
Yep.
So for anybody watching, Matt and I are in Victoria in Australia. And so it is 1 o'clock Sunday afternoon or Sunday midday.
Yeah. So
and for anybody wondering, like we're in our sheds. So our segment is Devs in the Sheds. We work sometimes from the shed. where we can both, get our hands on and off the keyboards, but also onto the tools. But it allows us to have our, electronics equipment nearby and do some soldering if we want to, without annoying the rest of the family inside.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've got a workspace in my spare room that I work from day to day. But it's nice to jump into the sheds and have all my IoT devices in the background. And then I've got a little bit on my old video games that I've just put in temporarily. But as we build projects, that shelf's probably going to be more and more IoT and less video games. And the video game stuff will go back in the house.
Yep.
And Kartik's right, actually. So Matt's shed is not ready. Yeah, so I'm waiting on wood to arrive because I'm actually building a cabin. So I wanted a proper working from home room that would kind of last the years and just set myself fully up in it. So it's going to have all my gear in it, all my IoT stuff, all my video games, and it's just going to be a nice area that I can leave the house, go to it, focus on work. And I've got a lot of toys as well that distract me going in there as well. But I think I'll be working from home for a fairly long while now. So I'm quite looking forward to having that nice space at home. I'll go to the office occasionally, I'll visit customers occasionally, but it'll be really nice to have a wood cabin that I can work from. The internet's really good in Australia now. I wouldn't have said that a year ago. So I think I can comfortably work, from home pretty much forever, and working for a global tech company, AWS. Everyone works from everywhere, so everyone's used to that flow of being virtual, which is really, really nice. And Kartik says wood's the most abundant. So yes, normally that's correct, but there is a global wood shortage at the moment, so it's very hard to get your hands on materials. I think because everyone has been working from home, and they have been doing a lot of renovation projects. There's a lot of new houses being built. There's actually a bit of a wood shortage. So instead of getting Australian wood, I had to get wood from Sweden. And that wood from Sweden, the ship's taken a little bit longer to arrive, and it's going through Sydney first. There's some alterations. They cut it for the cabin size, and then they basically send it on through to Melbourne. So it's probably going to take another month and a half, I reckon, until I'll be able to move into that space. But I was actually hoping by next week I'd be in it. So I'll stick to the shed for now, and then I'll make my way over, and I might do a little bit of an intro and show it off when I finally get into it. But the video quality will go up as well, because I'll be able to bring in my fancy webcam from inside the house across as well. Whereas my entire setup right now is really just a budget setup, right? I've got a very cheap Mac, iMac M1. Very lucky that they upgraded the camera to 1080p, so the camera quality is quite good. The microphone is basically just my AirPods, so nothing too fancy here, and I think Paul's very similar as well. Nothing too fancy in the setup. I had a chat.
Yeah.
I'm talking about this because yesterday I was chatting online to a bunch of people who are like, "Wow, your stream looks so great. How much did you spend on gear?" And it's like, it's my Mac. It's my headphones, and the only other thing that I've got is just a light coming into the shed in front of me because it's pitch black otherwise. So it's really not a fancy setup at all.
Well, mine's the same. Like, I did get an electrician to power my shed a while ago, like pre doing the stream. I wanted that anyway. But I have my AirPods, and I'm using the inbuilt webcam on a 2019 MacBook Pro 13-inch, and that's it. Like, really, like, not much of a fancy setup at all. For streaming, Matt and I have found that even doesn't matter how good you think your wireless setup is, it won't be good enough for streaming. So we both, like, I have Ethernet running into my shed. Matt has a really long cable running through his backyard.
Yeah, that's right.
The moment.
And every time I do the show, I run power and I run Ethernet from the backyard. I've got an external power thing next to the heater. So I just plug into that external power point, and then I run Ethernet from the bedroom through the window, just across about 5 or 10 meters into the shed itself.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's actually not too hard, right? Like, anyone can get on, sign up for a Twitch account, share what they're doing in the coding universe, share what they're building on AWS or what IoT projects they've got. It's really easy to get started and show your projects off to the world, but also get help, learn from people that are smarter than you that come into the chat and can help out when you get stuck as well. So it's really nice. It's kind of like live. Like it's almost like having everyone being able to give you a code review in real time as you do things live, right? And then also help with corrections is just sharing your screen and working through terminal. It's quite cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, but I got sidetracked, but Kartik said he's my shed final. But my shed is 2 sheds back to back. So when it warms up a little bit more and I can want to come outside and spend a little bit more time, like on the weekends doing things, I'm putting a door between the 2, but otherwise, yeah, it's final. I did have a poster earlier up on the wall and it fell down. I just said to Matt, I think we're gonna have to get some glue and glue it up. Blue tack doesn't seem to want to stick to the wall. But I have 2 sons, and they like to come out here and hang out with their dad as well. And both of them are doing a little bits of like coding. One of them's doing a Python course at the moment, so they kind of like to come outside as well. It's something different. Go outside and be in the shed. And so sometimes they're drilling and playing with tools or whatever, but sometimes they're doing some code out here as well. But it is good because you don't get interrupted. But Matt said earlier about the speed of the internet in Australia. I have NBN 100 megabit fiber to the curb, and I mean it's not anything super fancy, and the whole rest of the house is either streaming or playing games or something inside. But I was still getting, what did I have on my screen? I still got like, the average speed, even while I'm streaming now, was 76 megabits down and 30 megabits up. And that's with a cable that's probably, the length of the cable running through 2 switches is probably 100 meters from the front of the house. So it's pretty good.
Yeah. And I wouldn't have been able to do this when I was on ADSL, right? Because I would have only had 1 meg upload, or even just general cable back in the day. So moving to NBN is not anything special. I know Americans have 1,000 megabytes a second internet and 500 megabytes a second upload, but for a stream you need about 6 megabits a second to do the stream properly, and 30 is more than plenty. We can have multiple devices, people are uploading stuff and everything in the background. I'm sure the wife's inside the house, doing something on a computer, probably downloading this updates for games and then playing Age of Empires in the background. And it's fairly flawless now. So yeah, really happy. Most people give the NBN slack in Australia, but I've been really grateful to have internet that I can do all these things with finally over the last year.
Yeah, it wasn't even that long ago. I think in October this year is 2 years since I've had NBN, and only 2 years ago I only had, I think, 9 megabits down and 1.5 up or something like that. It was pretty slow.
Yeah. We're up to sim linking, are we?
Yeah. So this whole process took about 10 seconds on my Mac, taking incredibly long time on the Pi. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it doesn't take too much to go ahead and start streaming and for it to look okay. I think the advice is the most important thing is, a reasonable microphone. But we found that the AirPods work really well. Yeah,
you can go much fancier. I was just going to say, it's pulling down Postgres 12 and 13.
No, it's not. It's just they're just available in the EPL repository. Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
So this is just in that Linux extras. Those are those specific services that are available.
Yep. Yeah, I think a good microphone makes a big difference. But AirPods definitely do the job. You can get like really nice Blue Yetis for about $100-$200. The Rodes are a bit more expensive with a bit better sound as well, so you can go and use those. But a lot of the time, like your laptop's microphone's probably going to be good enough.
I have
so you don't have to spend the money to start. Really, it's nice. It's nice to spend the money you know, if you're going to do it all the time, then that's definitely worth doing that. But a lot of the time, just the webcam and the microphone in your laptop's going to be good enough to stream. The other really important thing though, and I might just try and get my phone up and see if I can show you guys. But I've got this ring light. It's really hard to see. Might move it back a bit, but just a nice light. So I have to have it because I'm in the shed. But if you have a really nice front-facing light, it's going to make your webcam look much better regardless of where your computer is and where you're streaming from. So lighting's actually really important to have and get right as well. And you can buy like really cheap lights on like Amazon.com.au. They're about $30 Australian for a really simple one. Trying to remember the brands. I might look them up in the background, but there's a couple of brands that are quite good. I think it's the same one that does the stands. So I'll go ring lights. Yeah, the newer brands, so NEEWER, they're really good, and they're really cheap, and you can pick them up from Amazon.com. If you want to go more pro, you want to spend the money, it's probably not worth it unless you're really avid and having a pro setup. You could get the Elgato lights, but you go from $30 to about 300 or 400 Australian. So it's not worth the money just for lighting. The $30 is going to do the job. But the Elgatos are just really nice quality. Like if you're going to make it a long-term investment and you have the cash on you to spend, but it's not necessarily the startup. You can just get a $30 one. Yeah.
So that container built, Matt. So now let's start it up.
Yep.
So once that starts up, the next command is we'll exec into that container. I agree with you, Matt. Like I have inside, I have a little ring light, which I do sometimes bring out here, but I have fluoro downlights, they're LED downlights, and they work really good for the shed. But I do have like a cheaper ring light. I think it was probably, like you said, maybe like $30 or something like that. And that's got a clip and an arm, and so you can sort of move it around, and I can position it where I need to do it. And you can make it brighter or dimmer and change the tone of the color. So I think, that it's not too expensive to get going. But then the jump to go to more professional gear is pretty significant.
Oh yeah. But get started. Bring your own laptop. Like spend less than $100. Get up and start of your stream, and then suddenly you go to like $5,000 worth of gear, and the quality difference is negligible unless you're really finicky. Especially if you're going to screen share and you get pushed to the side in this tiny little view, right? Like no one really cares about having an ultra pro quality camera if you're only like 10 pixels on the screen.
So I'm ready to register that instance, so we'll go ahead and we'll do that. While that's kicking off and going to head and install the SSM and the ECS agent and spin up that container, Matt, how did you go with yours?
So I followed Jason's steps for ECS Anywhere. So I ran his 5 different commands, pulled the image down. I got that up and running on mine.
Okay, so if I now paste you that link, will you be able to do it?
Yeah, paste me the link.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll stop sharing screen so I can send it across. So can you just take me off the screen sharing, Matt? Let me know when it's done.
I'll give you permission. You are off the stream with your screen share.
Okay. I'll just mail it to you. How will I send it to you? Yeah, I'll just mail it to
you. To my Matt J. Coles. I'll just PM you it.
Oh, actually, I'll paste it to you
to that one
in StreamYard. Yeah, I'll paste it to you in StreamYard
as well.
So have you got that?
Yep, and it started. Maybe what I'll do is I'll
I'll
share mine.
You can reshare my screen now just quickly, and we'll see whether when Matt runs that whether that comes in here.
Yep. Trying to wait for the ECS agent to start. It's super quick. These MacBook M1s are so good. They're cheaper than a normal laptop. Yeah, so fast as
Oh,
well.
wait, that's hard to say. Is that mine? Is that, no, it's definitely got to be you. So
Yeah, it's
now
me.
I
Give me 1
should be
second
able
as
to
well.
deploy a container on that. So if you run Docker PS, can you see it?
I can see the ECS agent when I do PS and the container ID. But make sure it's the ARM one, right? Like, please don't send me any
Yeah,
x86 stuff
I
on
did. I
this machine.
picked the
Cool.
rotating devs one. It just won't work. It'll fail.
Yep.
So it's pending. Can you see whether it's starting up?
Not yet. Oh, here we go. It started up just now.
So share your screen and show us.
Just do the entire screen. And I'll remove you from the stream. And I will add myself. Has it come up?
Yep. And so if you were to go in your browser now, like what did we do it as? Port 8081?
8080, I'm guessing.
I think it was 8081 I deployed it to.
Ah, okay. 8080
Oh, okay.
on local.
That's right. It was my
Yeah.
machine that I did 8081. But yeah, there we go.
Yep.
So it worked the way we expected it to.
Yeah, MacBook M1. That's awesome.
Cool. We'll flip back. What I'll do is I will stop that task now.
Okay. I'll just put your screen back on.
From the ECS instances, I will deregister. So I'll deregister that, so I can't just load up your computer with tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And in a minute or so, we should see. So now it's up to. So it's installed the ECS agent. It looks like it's installed SSM. So here are all the bits and pieces that do get installed inside that container to be able to enable us to deploy a task to it. But actually, like, that was good because I knew that container that I installed on my Raspberry Pi. Sorry, I built that container on the Raspberry Pi 4 and deployed it and pushed it up, ran on your M1.
Yep.
So that was nice to know that would work the way we had hoped it would work.
Well, now we've got we've got ARM for Pi, we've got ARM for Mac, we've got Windows being shown. Yeah, like we've got every OS. It's quite nice. By the way, I've just done a Docker stop and a Docker RM for that container ID for the ECS agent. So I've kind of deregistered my end as well.
Yep, cool. And that's the handy feature. So, if you were testing whether your tasks were working properly, you can go ahead and do that locally. Let's just say you needed a number of those specific containers up and running because you're doing some interactions between them, and you wanted to test the flow and the communication between those services. And they might be like over HTTP, for example, and if you're not running a mesh, so you're directly connecting to the service names. It would be a good way to go ahead and test that locally and deploy it in the same way. And maybe even if you were look, you could do all of that with Docker Compose and set up Compose files to have a number of different services running, but being able to do it in a consistent manner with ECS compared to your actual production workloads might be a really handy feature for developing and testing locally. I just especially when I'm thinking about Docker and spinning up all these different containers and running things locally. I know that this specific MacBook only has 8 gigs of RAM, so it does suffer a little bit, which means sometimes I tend to use Amazon Workspaces or Cloud9 to go ahead and build specific things.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're at the point where it's waiting for ECS agent to start. Now, this spun for a long time. One of the first times I tried this, and it was interesting to see like what was actually happening here, why this may time out.
Yeah.
And what I did do was have a look into this, because I did this once before on a Pi, and I'll suspect that this ECS agent will just continue to time out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think what the problem is here is this specific question. So there are two things. So this one here, and I'll paste that up here. To work through this was running on the Raspberry Pi was not using like this VFS mount for the storage driver. I was trying to use something else, AUFS. So what we'll do is I'll configure this. You can see that anytime it tries to read or write from that SD card, it's super slow. And then I'll restart that Docker service, and we'll see if we have any more luck this time.
I was going to say, like, 8 gigs is a bit of a struggle, right? Like this machine here is 8 gigs as well. The more RAM you can have when you're running Docker, the more it's going to take, and the more you can have run at the same time, right? So the machines might get quite loud if we've got lots of containers running. So I try and only launch Docker when I actually need it most of the time, and then I run a particular app on it, because otherwise my computer would always be running and struggling.
Yep.
So if your work can ever pay for a 16 gig machine, that's the way to go generally for Docker. But it can still run quite hot, and it can still use a lot of CPU as well. So it's quite a demanding thing. But surprisingly, it runs on the Raspberry Pi as well, right?
Yep. Now, for whatever reason, this is going to want to build this image all over again. I reckon that we call it for today. Like, this is just taking too long. I'll find an SD card. We'll plug it in, and we'll get it all going. And we'll do it with a faster SD card, or if my case arrives in time, I'll go ahead and I'll order one today. We can go ahead and set that up.
You're going to order one of these, are you?
Yeah. I'm going to order one of those cases.
Yeah.
I've got
Nice.
and I'll buy a small drive for that, because I just can't bear to go through this again. It's just going to take way too long. I mean, even just looking at this here, like, anything that is trying to do any sort type of writes, like, I don't really want to wait like 25 minutes again for this thing to happen all over again, because we got halfway through building that container, which is really weird, because I built that container, so I don't know why it didn't persist it. Like, yeah, the container should have been built. It should have been there. But after I restarted Docker, maybe because I changed something to do with that Docker daemon or something, I don't really know. But anyway, it's wanting to do it all over again and rebuild that container. And I think we'll finish up here for today. I mean, it was a valiant attempt. I'll give it that.
Oh, we covered a lot as well. Like, we got sidetracked many different times. So I think people learned about streaming a little more. We looked through Workflow Studio very briefly in AWS. We did get the deployment working on multiple machines, so we know the deployment's working fine. It's just the Raspberry Pi itself. But yeah, I mean, worst case, order the M.2. But worst case, I could even do a stream on it over the next couple of days. I could get it working on my end. That could be another option as well, because I'm sure it's only going to take like 5 or 10 minutes. When we've got a faster drive. So thanks everyone for watching. Anything else to end with, Paul?
No, just look, we appreciate any ideas or suggestions that people would like to go through. So anything that you'd like to dive into, let us know. Like, we read the comments, reach out to us.
Yeah.
devsintheshed.com is our website. You can go and have a look there. We're continually slowly updating that. And we'll attach the GitHub repo that we were working through today as well.
Yeah, and feel free to visit our YouTube channel, Devs in the Shed. All the videos that we do will be uploaded there later. Subscribe to this channel as well if you've come along. So the Devs in the Shed channel, you will see us. I'll just call out again. You'll see us on the AWS channel Wednesdays lunchtimes, Melbourne time. But whenever we've got something ad hoc that we want to do, like these particular projects, so they could range from 10 minutes to 50 hours, depending on if we're building an app from scratch or just want to tinker or get excited about something, you'll see us on this channel as well. So if you don't want to miss that, give us a sub, and we'll catch you all later. Hopefully everyone has a really good weekend, and look forward to next time. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Take care.